In July 2026, the United States will mark its 250th anniversary. The Freedom 250 celebration involves a state-sponsored projection of national unity, featuring an international naval review with warships and tall ships from 32 allied nations. This unified narrative of American exceptionalism depends on a specific historical curation. It requires the omission of the complex societal structures that existed on the continent for centuries before European contact. Between 950 and 1350, the primary urban center of North America was Cahokia. This Mississippian metropolis held a population of up to 40,000 people, larger than London during the same era. When 19th-century settlers encountered these earthworks, they promoted the mound builder myth. They claimed the structures were the work of Vikings or lost tribes of Israel, arguing that indigenous populations lacked the engineering capability to build them. This historical distortion provided a moral framework for empire. By framing Native Americans as late-arriving usurpers, the state manufactured a justification for their violent displacement and the seizure of their land. While the American Revolution was fought on egalitarian rhetoric, the post-war legal system prioritized social order over universal inclusion. Look at the 1787 Constitution. Despite its opening language, individual states limited the franchise to white men who met strict property or tax-paying requirements. The republic's structure successfully reproduced colonial-era racial and class stratification within its new democratic framework, effectively limiting who possessed actual freedom. That stratification was engineered in 1676 during Bacon's Rebellion. The Virginia colony was a powder keg of class tension, where a small elite held power over a growing population of heavily taxed, landless workers. The rebel forces that burned Jamestown were a multiracial coalition of poor whites and enslaved black laborers. They fought together against the colonial government. This cross-racial solidarity terrified the ruling class. To prevent future uprisings, the Virginia legislature began a decades-long process of legally separating white workers from black laborers. The resulting Virginia slave codes of 1705 institutionalized race-based slavery. White workers were granted property rights and roles in slave patrols, while black laborers were stripped of legal standing and subjected to severe corporal punishment. Racism in America was a deliberate social control formation. By providing poor whites with a superior legal caste, the elite neutralized the threat of multiracial rebellion and locked the South into an economic system built on absolute subjugation. By the mid-19th century, the United States faced an inevitable collision between two economic systems, the industrializing North and the slave-dependent agrarian South. The passage of the 13th Amendment legally abolished slavery. This action dismantled the Southern economic engine and represented a massive expansion of democratic rights for 4 million people. During Reconstruction, federal troops enforced biracial democracy and established public education for freedmen. However, white supremacist groups like the Ku Klux Klan launched organized terror campaigns to violently dismantle these democratic gains. Federal protection ended with the Compromise of 1877. To secure a disputed presidency, Republicans agreed to withdraw federal troops from the South, granting home rule to Southern Democrats. Political elites chose federal commercial stability over the civil rights of Black Americans. This deal functioned as a second founding, reconciling the nation by sacrificing its fragile biracial democracy to white supremacy for nearly a century. With the Southern racial order restored, the nation shifted towards explosive industrial growth. The wealth of the Gilded Age was built on 60-hour work weeks and suppressed wages for a rapidly expanding immigrant and domestic workforce. At the 1892 Homestead Strike, workers fought Carnegie Steel's union-busting tactics, facing off against private security forces. Throughout this era, the government intervened on behalf of corporations, dispatching state troopers to crush strikes and secure private property. During this period of industrial expansion, the federal state explicitly prioritized corporate hegemony over the civil liberties and economic survival of the working class. After 1945, the apparatus for domestic control evolved into a global national security state. The executive branch expanded its power to project American military and economic influence worldwide. That projection met its limits in the Vietnam War. The conflict demonstrated the vulnerability of conventional military power against relentless guerrilla warfare. The civil rights and anti-war movements of the 1960s were continuations of the struggles from the Gilded Age and Reconstruction. They represented a mass mobilization against a deeply entrenched state and social hierarchy. Today, as co-host of the 2026 FIFA World Cup, the United States projects immense cultural soft power, integrating global audiences into the American commercial ecosystem. This cultural spectacle occurs alongside an aggressive restructuring of the federal bureaucracy. In 2025 and 2026, the administration utilized executive power to institute domestic policing and restore the martial Department of War. By 2026, severe military escalations in the Strait of Hormuz drew the administration into a direct conflict with Iran. The United States utilized airstrikes and naval assets to secure energy corridors during a global trade crisis. The earthen mounds of Cahokia, the ashes of Jamestown, the abandoned promises of 1877, and the military response to Gilded Age strikes serve as the backdrop for a 2026 defined by martial executive power and AI data centers. American history is a continuous, contested war between the rhetorical promise of liberty and the structural requirements of capital and empire. As the nation marks its 250th year, it remains a struggle to define exactly who is granted the privilege of freedom.